Hey friends, happy Saturday. I'm Heather. I think you probably already know that by now, but I created this parent group to have a space for us all to come together, share some stories, learn some things, have some fun, not take ourselves or each other too seriously. It's a relatively new group, so thank you for checking it out and thank you for watching this video if you take the time to watch it. I don't know how long it's gonna last. I have been really embracing and also, if I'm being totally honest, somewhat avoiding this topic. I asked my friend Carrie Hyde, she's in the group. We used to work together and she's someone I respect very much as a parent. She's a mom of 6. Her oldest is 28, her youngest is 13. So I asked her to choose the topic for our next mini class, and she was interested in hearing more about rediscovering yourself beyond the roles of mom and dad. And she's getting towards those empty nest years. She's been a mom for 28 years and a few more to go, and her youngest will be an adult. So this was a topic that was interesting to her, and I didn't honestly really know where to start. I haven't explored the whole empty nest thing yet. My oldest is 11. I have helped to raise many other kids during my life. I'm the second of 7 kids. I've helped a lot of my siblings raise some of their children that are now adults, and I've always enjoyed my time with kids and helping to raise kids. Being a parent of your own is completely different, of course, and that has some additional stress and responsibility obviously involved. But not to talk too much about me here, I think I struggled though with imposter syndrome with this particular topic. So I was researching statistics, finding out how high divorce rates are for people that are empty nesters that have maybe stayed together for the kids, and then, you know, just coming into all this sort of negative information. Empty nest syndrome, I learned a lot about that. So I did a fair amount of research, and then I said, well, I've never been through this myself. Maybe I should talk to some people who have been through it. And so I reached out to my mom. She is a wonderful lady. She had 7 kids, her and my dad. And I asked her if she wouldn't mind answering a few questions. So I want to start with my intro and then going over these questions that I wanted to ask my mom. And then I have a couple readings, and then I'm going to attempt to bring it all together, because the focus today, we want it to stay positive and we want it to be about finding fun and positivity and gratitude and new purpose in your life beyond your role of being a parent. And I'm saying your role right now because I realize a lot of people do tend to associate their identity with the role of being a parent. What I'm hoping to do today is talk a little bit about that and a different way of looking at it. So it's not, you know, our parenting, our years of parenting are not completely defining us as people, and how, you know, just some things we can do to transition beyond the parent years. So let's get into these questions that I asked my mom. There are 7 of us kids in my family. I am number 2. So pretty cool. I started off just asking, how many years have you been an empty nester? And she said 10 years with no minor children in the home. So how many years did you spend raising children in your home, not including adult kids? Her answer, I spent 38 years raising children in our home. So I asked her to please share some feelings that she experienced during the first few months as she accepted the change of not having children in the house. And I will add into this that when my youngest brothers, there's some age gaps in between, like groups of kids that were born. It was me and two of my brothers that were kind of the first chunk, and then my sister and a brother, and then two more brothers kind of at the end. So when it was just the two youngest left at home, they were 12 and 14, and our dad passed away. So that adds a different dynamic to a lot of what my mom has experienced in her like empty nest years and coming to terms with all of that. So that may weigh into the answers a little bit. So I asked her to share some of the feelings she experienced during the first few months as the last two were becoming adults and leaving. And she said, believe it or not, I found myself then, and even still, awkwardly processing and trying to find my way day by day. And I feel a lot of emotion behind that answer, and I can try to put myself in those shoes and like, yeah, it's something that's just after 38 years of raising children, that's going to be an adjustment. So what were some of the things you did to fill your time as final children were becoming adults and moving out? And her answer, I found that doing volunteer work and looking for opportunities to help others has consistently given me a sense of identity and purpose. And that's very true of my mom. She loves to serve other people, and that brings her a lot of joy, and she's really good at it. So what brought you the most joy and excitement during that time of adjustment was one of the questions. She said, family time with our grown children and grandchildren has brought and still brings the most joy. And I asked, did you learn or discover anything new about yourself? Take on any new hobbies? And I love this answer. She says, one thing I learned is that mothering for all those years made me extremely flexible and able to go with the flow of what is needed in any mostly given moment. And that's so true. Like, we have to be flexible as parents or we're miserable, and we don't want to be miserable. So we learn to be flexible, kind of try to go with the flow. She says, I also have learned to notice and acknowledge others in varying spaces that I may be occupying, such as grocery stores, social gatherings, etc., and to be forthcoming with greetings, compliments, smiles, all that, regardless of familiarity, age, ethnicity, demeanor, apparent wealth or lack thereof, and so on. And I think that's really neat. We just, as parents, most of us tend to get into the habit of noticing other people's needs. So we may notice someone that is standing in the corner alone or doesn't have anyone to talk to, or a parent with 3 small kids on their own that like, oh, maybe we'll give them a hand. So it just makes us more aware, I think. I asked her, what advice would you give to other parents who are on the verge of becoming empty nesters or are in the first stages of empty nest? She says, my advice would be to find somebody to serve. There is great fulfillment in this. Your skill sets, your gifts, your loves can steer you and help you along the way to discovering your new niche. Travel if you can, get outdoors more, breathe, do something creative. There's a lifetime of lessons learned along the way. There are just a few brief and incomplete observations. These are just a few brief and incomplete observations. Hope they will be of help to someone, she said. So I wanted to start with that. I think these are really awesome, well thought out answers. And we did email back and forth, so I had time to think about what I want to ask. She had time to answer. And I think this is beautiful. I'm so glad I did this, because I'll look back on this, 10 years from now when my littlest is leaving the house, and I'll go, oh, wow, okay, yep. Find someone to serve, Heather. That's why I'm here, actually. I already know that there's a lot of joy in serving others. So back to the topic that Carrie had asked for, Rediscovering yourself. I looked up the root of the word parent and the Latin root. And the meaning of this word at its foundation, at the root, parent means to bring into being or to bring forth. So focusing on bringing into being, and just the word being. I'm a big Eckhart Tolle fan, and he just talks about being present and really and truly being present and letting go of thought forms that keep you stuck in the past or having anxiety about the future, but just practicing being present. And it is a practice. It's a constant practice. And I did some reading in one of his books that I want to get to for everybody, and also keep an eye on the time so I don't go too long, because I actually have to go pick up my kids shortly. I did procrastinate on this for a bit. I really didn't know what I was going to say. So yeah, my mom helped me out a lot with her answers. And then we're going to look at 2 books. Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth, that has some really good stuff in here. I hope you think it's good too. And then You Are a Badass. This is an awesome book. It helped me through a really hard time of life. But yeah, it's by Sincero is her name. It's a self-help book. You Are a Badass, How to Stop Doubting Your Greatness and Start Living an Awesome Life. And she's super sassy, funny, has a great sense of humor. She's a good storyteller. So we're going to get to that in a little bit, but we're going to start with Eckhart Tolle. I looked online just trying to get some notes together. Like I said, statistics, I'm not really going to talk about those because that's not what this is about today. I wanted to kind of focus on what does being a parent mean and looking up the root of that, and also some of the functions that parents serve. So providing for physical needs of children, emotional support. We're there to teach them, to protect them, safety, give them guidance. We need to give our children love. We're listening to them, helping them to figure out who they are. So it's an imperfect practice, and we learn as we go. So one of the things that Eckhart Tolle talks about that I was just reading and hoping some things would jump out of the pages and help me out with this topic, because like I said, I've had a little bit of imposter syndrome because I haven't been through the empty nest years, and I think I was avoiding thinking about that, because your identity when you're raising children is kind of tied up in that for a while. And we have our careers, we have our homes, a lot of us have our careers, or just other things, hobbies that we enjoy. We have things outside of parenting, but for many of us, parenting is like really the main focus, and that becomes a big part of who we are. So I want to talk about the role or identity of being a parent versus the functions and the being that is a part of parenthood. And then we're going to transition after that through accepting the changes that come with children becoming adults, and kind of having some enjoyment and enthusiasm in rediscovering yourself. So what I found here that I want to share with you is Eckhart Tolle talking about parenthood as a role or a function is what this section is called. So he says, part of the necessary function of being a parent is looking after the needs of the child, preventing the child from getting into danger, and at times telling the child what to do and not to do. When being a parent becomes an identity, however, When your sense of self is entirely or largely derived from it, the function easily becomes overemphasized. What is more, the role-playing identity remains in place long after the need for those particular functions has passed. He says parents then cannot let go of being a parent even when the child grows into an adult. Then it goes into some more, I'm going to skip around a little bit. He says they come into this world through you, but they are not yours. The belief, I know what's best for you, may be true when they are very young, but the older they get, the less true it becomes. The more expectations you have of how their life should unfold, the more you are in your mind instead of being present for them. Eventually, they will make mistakes, and they will experience some form of suffering, as all humans do. In fact, they may be mistakes only from your perspective. What to you is a mistake may be exactly what your children need to do or experience. Give them as much help and guidance as you can, but realize that you may also at times have to allow them to make mistakes, especially as they begin to reach adulthood. At times, you may also have to allow them to suffer. And that's really hard for parents. My kids come home with stories of bullying, or, they want to try out for a team. I know they're probably not going to make it. And it's like, you just want to protect them, but they need to do that. We need to give them that space to do hard things or to make mistakes and learn those hard lessons on their own. So this is just about like letting go and surrendering. And I'm going to take you on a little journey of, the different steps that it takes to get through the acceptance of life beyond parenthood. So we're going to skip over here to page 103. So he's talking about conscious parenting now and role versus function and all of that. He says the child has a deep longing for the parent to be there as a human being, not as a role, no matter how consciously that role is being played. You may be doing all the right things and the best you can for your child, but even doing the best you can is not enough. In fact, doing is never enough if you neglect being. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because he gets into, I'll just keep reading and then I'll bring it all together. Hopefully, I hope this is all going to make sense for you. How do you bring being into the life of a busy family, into the relationship with your child? The key is to give your child attention. That's what they want. That's what we all want. And then he talks about the two different kinds of attention, which is form-based attention, physical needs, and formless attention. So he says, as you look at, listen to, touch, or help your child with this or that, you are alert, still, completely present, not wanting anything other than that moment as it is. In this way, you make room for being. In that moment, if you are present, you are not a father or mother. You are the alertness, the stillness, the presence that is listening, looking, touching, even speaking. You are the being behind the doing. And then he talks about recognizing and how loving is to recognize yourself in another. He says, when another recognizes you, that recognition draws the dimension of being more fully into the world through both of you. And this is the love that redeems the world, he says. It's the connection. And he talks about too how a lot of times when there's some resentment between parents and kids, it's because they just want to be recognized by each other. And I really think the only way to do that is to stop and be present. And I'm saying this to myself too, because I need constant reminders of this. So making peace with the present moment, I think that is the key to rediscovering yourself beyond parenthood. And so I want to skip kind of towards the end of the book here. Another little quote I said, I didn't write down the page that it came from, but one of his quotes in this book says, attachment to things drops away by itself when you no longer seek to find yourself in them. So if you're always seeking for your identity in your children, it's going to be harder for you to kind of rediscover yourself beyond that identity. So hopefully this is all kind of coming together. With the end, towards the end of the book, he is talking about, let me turn to page 295. I want to talk about this being because this is something when your kids leave the home, I've noticed this with my mom for sure. When your children leave the home and your parenting, full-time parenting years are kind of done, like you're always a parent, but I think you have more opportunity then to be present with the children because they're not taking over the home. You're not like 7 against 1 outnumbered. In my case, it's three against 1, but no, I don't mean against. We have a fun family dynamic here. It's not perfect, obviously. But I think when the children start becoming adults and you don't see them as often, but you can really make the most of that time that you do have together. And even if you are in your 50s, 60s, 70s, like start teaching yourself to be present. And what does that feel like? What does it look like? Can I lead by example and show that to my children who are, if they haven't already, going to be having their own children? I'm going to be a grandparent, like all these wonderful gifts later in life that we don't think about when we're young. So page 295, and I'm going to read a little bit more out of this one and then we'll move to the next one. So he talks about the modalities of awakened doing. So awakened doing, it just means like you're more aware and you're more present, you're able to enjoy the moments. So, and this all comes into play as you're rediscovering yourself beyond your parental roles. He says the modalities of awakened doing are acceptance, enjoyment, and enthusiasm. Each one represents a certain frequency of consciousness. You need to be vigilant to make sure that one of them operates whenever you're engaged in doing anything at all, from the most simple task to the most complex. If you're not in the state of either acceptance, enjoyment, or enthusiasm, look closely and you'll find that you are creating suffering for yourself and others. I think this is why serving is just so powerful, because it is enjoyment and sometimes it can be, and we can have some enthusiasm with that, but it just takes our minds off of ourselves and puts them onto other people. So for acceptance, whatever you cannot enjoy doing, you can at least accept this as what you have to do. Acceptance means, for now, this is what this situation, this moment requires me to do, and so I do it willingly. And sometimes that's going to be saying goodbye to a child who's moving out of the home and going to college. It's not goodbye forever, it's goodbye for now, and I've done my job, and you're responsible enough to live your life as an adult. And that's what we want for our kids. It's also okay that it's still hard to accept that. So moving on to enjoyment, the peace that comes with surrendered action turns to a sense of aliveness when you actually enjoy what you're doing. When you make the present moment, instead of past and future, the focal point of your life, your ability to enjoy what you do, and with it the quality of your life, increases dramatically. Joy is the dynamic aspect of being. When we are not stuck in the past or future, that essentially does away with depression and anxiety. depression is generally based in the past, some past traumas, past experiences. And anxiety is based in the future and what we're imagining all these possible negative outcomes could be. And when we can be present, depression and anxiety just fade away greatly. They're not totally gone. They're going to creep in, but once you can control that dynamic a little bit, it has a really powerful effect on your mental health. And I think that society in general could do a better job of teaching that to our children. So as a parent, we can teach our children at any age, really. Enthusiasm. So enthusiasm means there's deep enjoyment in what you do, plus the added element of a goal or a vision that you work toward. When you add a goal to the enjoyment of what you do, the energy field changes. At the height of creative activity, fueled by enthusiasm, there will be enormous intensity and energy behind what you do. You will feel like an arrow that is moving toward the target and enjoying the journey. So that is it from this book. Eckhart Tolle is wonderful. I love him. He's a cute little German guy. He pauses a lot when he speaks too. He pauses to think and he chooses his words very carefully. He ends with talking about enthusiasm and how you need goals so that you can move towards a target. And as you make incremental progress, it gives us enthusiasm. And so I think that as parents, once our children become adults and start to move out, like that, whether or not we want to admit it, that is the goal as a parent. If you're doing what's right for your kids and what's right for you, we want them to be independent. We want them to thrive in the world. So once they're adults and moved out, our job is done and we need a new goal or we don't have a purpose. So how do you find new purpose? How do you set new goals? How do you rediscover yourself? So that's where I'm going to shift to this book. It is really fun. She has this whole section in here. This is not meant for empty nesters. This is meant more for, I think, for like young adults or not. It could be for anyone. But I love this section because I think everything in it, she talks about, there's this whole chapter, what are you doing here? And she talks about how you can find your purpose. And there's some different fun practices that she pulls in. One sec. It's almost like a live training. I'm not going to edit this out. I'm not good at editing. It's too time consuming. Okay. What are you doing here? She gives you all these ways to like figure out what your calling is. So I'm just going to read some of them and I'll go through rather quickly because we're getting to almost half an hour here. 7 steps. So she says, every single person is born with unique and valuable gifts to share with the world. Once we figure out what ours are and decide to live our lives putting them to use, that's when and only when the real party begins. Living a life on purpose is available to everyone, even after your kids are grown and gone. So let's get excited. This one's cool, and I think of this a lot. She calls this Be the Alien. So imagine that you're an alien. This is number 1. Figure out your new purpose. Help you set goals. Be the alien. Imagine that you're an alien floating around in outer space, and you suddenly swoop down to Earth and inhabit your own body. As the alien, everything about this life is new to you. You look around. What do you see? What is this person who you've inhabited so obviously awesome at? What do they have the most fun doing? What connections do they have? What resources and opportunities are available to them? As the alien, to whom everything is new and exciting, and there's nothing at risk and no past to lug around, what are you going to do with this incredible new life you've stepped into? How are you going to use this new body and this existence to create something fabulous and awesome starting right now? Sometimes it's as simple as looking at things with new eyes to see how astoundingly fortunate we are. Be the alien for 24 hours and see what you come up with. As I was looking for some wisdom to add into this topic, the alien concept jumped out at me because it is so foreign as we're trying to rediscover ourselves once the kids don't need us as much anymore. So I think in a lot of ways it does feel like being an alien. We're just like, what do we do with ourselves now? We've spent so many years pouring ourselves into raising our kids, and now they're independent and functioning on their own. So yeah, so just be the alien and have the new perspective and the new eyes and look for meaning and something else. The number 2 is take the first right step. So she says, instead of wasting hours and days and years trying to figure out your perfect next move, just do something already. Oh, the time we waste rolling ideas around in our heads, imagining what ifs, coming up with perfect reasons why and then perfect reasons why not, tearing at our cuticles, making our friends and family carefully screen their calls in case it's us again, wanting to go over some ideas. Get out of your head and take action. And she says, most answers reveal themselves through doing, not thinking. And this is a great reminder for me. I've had to do a lot of work in training myself to not overthink situations, not always go for perfection. A lot of times, imperfect action now is better than waiting and waiting and waiting until you're ready to know what the next step is. Just do something. So that's her point on this one. Number 3, do your best wherever you're at. If you want to keep moving forward, appreciate wherever you're at instead of feeling ashamed or grouchy or impatient about it. This is where really being present in the moment comes in handy. You are surrounded by unthinkable miracles and opportunities. This one to me is just saying be grateful, look around and be grateful for where you are, where you've come from, where you can go. And there's a lot of power and joy in practicing gratitude. Number 4, don't reinvent the wheel. Look around you and see what other people out there are doing. Whose life makes you totally jealous? I'm a firm believer, this is a side note, in comparison being the thief of joy, but there are ways to use comparison to create new visions for your future. And like she's explaining it here, I think this is a great way to use comparison. So look around, see what other people are doing, whose life makes you totally jealous. What things are people doing that you would love to do too? What do you think is, or who do you think is the coolest person ever? You don't need to invent your ideal life from scratch. You just need to figure out what makes you feel alive. So if what someone else is doing sparks your interest, take notice. It could mean that your calling has something in common with theirs. So that's a really powerful way to kind of come up with some purpose. She says, read magazines that interest you, talk to as many people as you can, hang out in places where people who share your interests hang out. Put yourself out there, and you never know what you might learn that will inform your next move, or who you might meet that will present you with your next opportunity. We've got 3 left here. This number 5, she says, don't get caught up in the thunderbolt hype. So she writes, I think one of the most paralyzing misconceptions is that we're all supposed to have one true calling that comes to us in a mighty flash of soul-defining insight. If you think about it, it makes more sense to evolve as you age anyway. Follow what feels good in the moment, every moment, and it will lead you through a most excellent life. And then I add, be present. Listen to your intuition is number 6. If you really want to get in touch with who you are and what you love to do and who you love to do it with, dedicate some time to tuning into your intuition. One of the best ways to do this is to spend 5 minutes of quiet by yourself every day. I think this is really frightening for people who are becoming empty nesters. Being alone is just so foreign, so uncomfortable. but we have to do it. You have to do it. And I think the more with repetition, just put in the reps, like the more you do it, the more you'll get comfortable with it. You can work through some of those tough emotions if you're having tough emotions. We spend the vast majority of our time moving at full speed ahead, both physically and mentally, and we literally bulldoze over the very answers we're seeking because they can't be heard above the noise. When you sit quietly and ask, you get an answer eventually. And then the last one is to follow your fantasies. It's kind of a fun topic. So she says, jump in the deep and follow your fantasies. What do you fantasize about when you're staring out the window? Before you go to sleep at night, when you're pretending to listen to someone really boring talk your ear off? Maybe you're doing that to me now. I don't know. That's fine. Are you on stage doing stand-up comedy in front of thousands of hysterical fans? Are you surrounded by your adult children and their children in a happy home environment? Are you being celebrated for building orphanages around the world? Do this exercise as if money were not an issue. Tap into what brings you great joy instead of what you think you need to do to survive. Our fantasies are the most revealing peepholes into who we are and what we think is awesome. So that is kind of it for this topic. I had to consult with some experts, him, her, and my mom. This is her email, our emails. Like I said, I was getting over some imposter syndrome with this, but I do like a good challenge, and I know that this is going to come up more as I talk to more families and more parents and try to empathize with what they're going through and the different sides, like the kid's side, the parent's side, the person in the middle who's trying to hear what everyone is going through. I'm going to be going through this at some point. This was a tough one for me, but I really hope that you guys got something out of it. If you want to comment any ideas that you have for future topics, anything you want me to talk about, I'm happy to do it. I like a challenge. I do recognize sometimes if I'm procrastinating or working through some of my own emotions in order to get some of this content written or researched and out to you in form of video. Any comments or thoughts or ideas that you want to add, please feel free to do that. If you want any of the resources, the notes, any of the quotes, let me know. I can send those over to you. And it's Saturday afternoon. I have to go get my kiddos. I'm going to upload this video and send it off and hope for the best. Hopefully someone gets something out of it. Thank you, Mom and Carrie, for your help with this one. And I hope you all have a beautiful rest of your weekend. Okay, bye.